Welcome to Beauties and Beasties, the independent pest podcast for the UK.
Oi, oi.
Now, young man, how are you?
I'm okay. I think Colin's disappeared because he's had a power cut already. Oh, he's back again.
Here he comes. We've got him back.
Got
him back.
Yeah.
Wayne Gardner, nice to see you, young man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm okay, mate. So you gotta put up with me again this week. Alex is going to be shifting off to the was it Indonesia or something?
Oh, I don't know. He said it's a drop and roll as well, isn't it? In and out, like drop and go.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're gonna have to put up with me. Has it been busy this week?
Yeah, it has. Yeah, it's just that time of year, isn't it? Maybe it's not as busy as it could have been, but still busy. But I guess at this time of the year, if you're not literally getting 6 million calls a day and 90% of them aren't any good, you feel like you're not busy enough, don't you? But we're busy and we've got a bit on, and yeah, we're doing sort of all right. Little dog's coming on all right. She's doing pretty good, to be fair. She's a nice little bit of kid. Pretty easy to deal with. Well, incredibly easy to deal with compared to what I'm used to. She's just like, it's almost like she's been born half trained. That's the only way I can describe her.
Is that from the parents, though, is it?
Yeah, just genetic. You're just sort of pushing and shoving her to where you want her, rather than like with the lurchers and the terriers. It's like, especially the terriers, it's not a lot you can do with them, really, in comparison with these things. But yeah, she's a nice little springer. So yeah, we're dodging about. How's your week been?
Yeah, it's been pretty hectic this week. We've been pretty busy.
Steve,
one of our guys has been off. Steve's been off. So the other guys have hands to the pumps and kept everything going. So yeah, not too bad at all. Ticking along fine. Just about, couldn't be handling too much more at the moment. So yeah, been doing all right. Yeah, not too bad at all.
Awesome, yeah. I missed the last 2 weeks here.
Yeah.
I got to watch last week's because I came in halfway through, but I didn't want to interrupt, so I just watched it.
Yeah.
And I caught up on the other one. Two good episodes, I thought.
Yeah. No, they went well. We had Farah last week, and I can't even remember now. My brain's gone to mush.
I seen a post on LinkedIn from a scaffolder.
Oh yeah.
And he was talking about problems in scaffolding, can't get young people into it. Honestly, it could have been a pest control podcast, pest control post. Could have been that post. Like, it was exactly the same. And I do wonder if it's not just us, if it's a lot of trades, if there's a lot of lads who aren't going into physical work anymore or into the trades or whatever it is. I don't know. After watching that with Farah, I was quite. I was very impressed with him. I thought he was a great young man, a credit to himself and his family. But also, I thought he was. He sort of gave you hope that we're not in the position that we feel like we're in. We just maybe need to look in a different place and encourage different people into the industry.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, he did really, really well. Really well. Yeah, impressive young chap, actually.
Yeah, very, very good. Yeah.
On somebody beginning their journey into pest control, as it were. I'm not saying he's coming to the end of his career in pest control, but who's been in pest control quite some time. We have a guest tonight that's been inventing stuff and been involved in pest control for a considerable amount of time, I should say. So shall we welcome on Colin?
Yeah.
Here we go.
Hello,
Colin.
Hi.
Hello, young man.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, we're okay. Did you hear your introduction?
Wonderful. I hope I can live up to it.
So we had a young chap on last week. I don't know if you saw it, and he's just starting in his career in pest control. I think Farah was 23. And there's been an initiative from Syngenta and the MPTA to take 5 young people under 25 and train them and pay for their training and get them off on their merry way, as it were.
Yeah,
So,
very good. I did pick up some of it, and I was listening to what you were saying just now. And although I've been out of the industry for about 20 years now, I still keep a watching brief, not just on pest control, but wider things as well. And it's interesting what you were saying about the will of young people, etc., because, I've picked up the same thing, which is, I think the problem is today, a huge number of people are cack-handed. And this is because we stopped woodwork and metalwork at school. And I had a young nephew working with me who I was mentoring. And I mean, you could give him some tools and he was absolutely useless. He didn't have a clue. And I said to him, why, when I was your age, I could use a screwdriver and a chisel. And he said, no, no good having a go at me. He said, at school, we're not even allowed to have a Stanley knife.
Yeah.
And so that has gone out of the curriculum. So it's no wonder that we have people coming into this country from Poland and places like that who still do all of that at school. And now the plumbers and the electricians and everybody. And we haven't got anybody now. So it's commendable that the associations want to take these people and train them, but good luck on that, because you're going to struggle to find people who are able to do it. I mean, I really do feel that our generation have let these people down, because when you get things happening today, which are, to me, unbelievable, you just can't believe that something's happening. Whereas, when I was working, again for Rentokil and other companies, if I'd said some of the things that are now going on, I would have been sacked. I would have been sacked as an idiot. I mean, for example, what sort of person can come up with the idea in Scotland that they're going to stop landfill? They interviewed this guy and they said, are you the man? He said, oh, yes. So they said, well, okay, very commendable, but what are we going to do with the waste? He said, well, we haven't thought that far yet, so we'll probably send it to England.
Well, thanks for that.
So, you see, how did that get to a stage where it became policy? Because that means all of the chain are in it, whereas certainly in my day, there would have been an almighty thump on the desk and I would have been told to clear off and go and play with myself. So it's things like this that I look at today and I think, well, why don't these people know these things? It doesn't make any sense.
So it's correct. Tell everybody, just in case they don't know, and tell our listeners, give us a little bit of insight to who you were, how you started in pest control, where you came from, and how it all sort of panned out.
No, quite. Well, the lovely thing is that now I've retired, and I mean, I think retirement's wonderful. I have a lovely time doing all sorts of things, still inventing, still doing. I've got a very large workshop, and I'm knocking out stuff all the time. And it's something you can't stop. If you're an inventor, you haven't got any choice as to whether you invent or not. It's just something you do. Anyway, I joined Rentokil in 1978, and looking back at it all, I now regard it as almost as the perfect storm, because it turned out to be the best job in the world. I mean, it was my career was incredible, but I can't take full credit for it, because the expression, I did it standing on the shoulders of giants. Because I mean, I don't know how old you are, but certainly in 1978, it was the infancy of pest control, because at that time there were many problems that we just simply couldn't solve. We had no answer to, there's a whole spectrum. I mean, for example, bird control. We had no idea about bird control. Well, even rodent control and everything. They were all, there was a little bit of knowledge, but people really, we were blundering. But as it happened, when I joined Rentokil R&D, as I say, it's a perfect storm, because what happened was there were some of the most brilliant minds in the country working there. And I'm talking about people like Peter Cornwall, John Bull, Adrian Meehan.
Yeah.
These were incredibly intelligent academics. So they knew their biology inside out. And fortunately, a lot of it rubbed off on me, because I'm not a trained biologist, but when you work with people like that, you pick up a hell of a lot. Having said that, and this is no disrespect to these people whatsoever, quite the opposite. Apart from John Bull, the others were academics. And throughout my career, what I find is I've worked with many PhDs, brilliant academics. They know all the theory, but they're not practical.
Sean likes academics.
Oh, do you? Yeah.
No, never been in my life, because I find exactly the same thing. It's that, my little brother says it. He goes, pen and paper, common sense.
Yeah, exactly. So what I brought to the table was applied science. So I would have an idea, and I'd say to them, look, could we do this and this and this? And they would then tell me chemically or biologically or whatever as to what it needs to do to work. And then I would go off and develop the technology. And that happened time and time again. But at the time, I was working for Rentokil R&D. And although it was fantastic, unfortunately, Peter Cornwall retired. And we had a new bloke that came in. And quite honestly, I didn't get on with him. And so I was now thinking, do I want to carry on with this? Well, again, go back to the perfect storm. At that time, Sir Clive Thompson took over as chief executive.
Mr. 20%.
Oh, yeah. Now, again, absolutely brilliant mind. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but his training is as a chemist.
He used to work about 3 miles away from where I'm sitting.
Oh, right. Was it
because
Clean Killers? No, not
he
Clean.
aerosol factory.
Pardon?
He worked at an aerosol factory just down the
Yes,
road
that's
from here.
right. That's right. That's before he joined Rentokil.
Mhm.
Anyway, absolutely brilliant mind. And even then, the company was quite small. I mean, he was the chief executive. And he'd been there for about 3 years before Peter Cornwall retired. And he knew that I didn't get on with the new bloke. So one day he called me into his office and said, he said, I've been watching you. And he said, like me, he said, you're a fellow chemist, aren't you? And I said, yeah. He said, right. He said, before you say anything, I know exactly what you're thinking and the frustrations you're having and all the rest of it. But he said, here's the deal. You've got your own department now. I'm making you a general manager of your own department. And there are no rules. You can do what you like. I'll give you a huge budget. And all I want you to do from time to time is tell me what you're doing. And that was it. So I had the budget, I had the access to funds, which meant then that I could now develop my own ideas and go from there. And then on top of that, for another couple of years, he mentored me. He would, I mean, this is the chief executive of the company, and he would have me in and say, right, now, what are you up to then? And so I'd tell him, and he said, right, now, word of advice, I think you should do this and this and this and this. And it was incredible. And then I did other things then. I did these things off my own bat, thinking that any day now I'm going to get called in and sacked. But I started my own, what became known as my flying squad. I gathered a group of people in the company that I'd identified as being outstanding people, good technicians mainly, on 24 hours standby to go anywhere in the world to sort out major pest control problems. And that really took off. And so I would literally, get a phone call, well, from anywhere in the world. We've got a problem here. Can you help us? And with that, next day, I would send one or two of my blokes out there to go and do a survey. And from that, we got millions of pounds worth of work. And on top of that, we got a reputation. We got a reputation of being discreet, effective, and honest. And as a result of that, we worked in some of the most exclusive places in the world, places that you would never dream existed. For example, we did multi-billionaires' luxury yachts. And I'll tell you a little story about that, just for the benefit of the pest controllers listening. It's a very interesting story. The company that made these yachts, and we're talking about the Bill Gates and all of those of the world, some of these yachts were made in Holland. And our Dutch company worked for them. And it started off one day that our technical manager in Holland phoned me up and he said, can you help us? Because that's the other thing that happened. We had all of these companies around the world, but when they ran into really difficult technical problems, they knew that they could come to me and I'd try and help them, you see. And that's how it worked. So he phoned me up and he said, we've got this problem with this yacht. And I can't remember. Oh, it was in Athens. That's right. They'd made this yacht and sold it. And the owner started complaining about dust coming down from the ceiling. So he said, we've looked, they've given us some photographs. And he said, it looks like woodworm. So I said, right, okay. Well, anyway, to cut it short, I went out to Athens to carry out an inspection of this yacht. It was the most incredible thing I've ever seen. It was the shipping magnate Latsis, who was the brother of Onassis. And he'd had this yacht made for his wife. It was called the Rio Rita. And it was stunningly beautiful, inside and out. And all of these yachts, and this is a world most people don't know anything about, all of these yachts, and there's hundreds and hundreds of them, are permanently crewed by normally about 10 people. And most of them are Brits. So anyway, I got out there and I said, well, what's the problem? We went into the bridge and they took the ceiling down and it was riddled. And it was powder post beetle. And I mean, in some bits of it, there wasn't any wood there at all. Because what they did, they made the structure, the hull and everything was steel, but the cladding inside was wood. And it was absolutely heaving. So we fumigated it with Vicane. It was the only time that Vicane had ever been used in Europe. And I brought it over from America with our technical manager from America. And you know, when you work with these people, again, if you're honest and trusted, money's no object. All right, they don't care about money. What they want is the job done, and for you not to tell anybody. So I said, well, the problem we got is getting the Vicane over from America, because you know there's all sorts of import limitations and everything on it, even in those days. So they said, oh, don't worry about that. We'll sort that out. Where is it? I said, well, it's in Florida. Oh, okay. Anyway, a few days later, my mate in America, the technical manager, phones me up. He said, what the hell's going on? And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, our supplier of Vicane in, I can't remember what the port was, one of the ports in Florida. He said, a bloody great big oil tanker's just come in and parked in their harbour. And he said, they've asked us to put 9 cylinders of Vicane on the bow. So they did that, and then they brought it across to Athens, because this bloke, you know, he was an oil magnate, shipping magnate. He could send his boats wherever he wanted to. Anyway, we fumigated that one. And after that, we got more of them. We got, one every 6 months. And these were people like, who was the guy, Bill Gates' partner, who started off Microsoft? Paul Allen. Well, he had a yacht called Octopussy, and it was colossal, and it was filled with the absolute state-of-the-art technology. You've never seen anything like this. He had recording studios on board. He had cinemas, and you've never seen anything like it. Anyway, again, when we started taking the panels down, the powder post everywhere. So again, we had to fumigate it. And anyway, we got to the point where I said to my mate in Holland, what's going on with these? Why are they always infested? And he said, well, that's what they're asking us. So I said, well, let's go over and have a look. So we went over there to the shipyard, and we went to their wood store. And what they did, they kept all of their wood in the store to season it, because they were absolute craftsmen. I mean, the work they did was incredible, very conscientious, but they kept all of this wood in a wood store, indoors. And these carpenters there, in their spare time, made little dinghies and things for their own use. And they stored these dinghies amongst the logs in the wood in store. Anyway, so we had a look around and we dragged one of these little dinghies out, and it was riddled with powder post beetles. And that was the source of infestation. It had spread from these dinghies into their timber store. So we then had to, we did two things. One, I can't remember the wood that they were using, but it was a soft wood, very prone to powder post. They stopped using that and went over to cedar. And we fumigated their timber store. And that was more or less the end of it, except, of course, they'd already made quite a few more of these ships that were dotted all around the world. So for a couple of years, I spent most of my time just flying around the world, sorting out these ships. Tremendous fun. And I got to know all of the people and the crews and everything. And and again, money was no object. I mean, they would put me up in the best hotels, first class air travel everywhere. It was absolutely wonderful. But on top of that, they appreciated that I knew what I was talking about. And that's why we got the work.
So you had something to do with the introduction of Bromard, didn't you?
Yeah. You see, that's a very good example there, what I was talking about earlier. you see, the academics, Adrian in particular, he knew that anticoagulants were an excellent way of controlling rodents. But the problem is, as you probably well know, it's not very palatable.
Just for everybody that's listening, they might not know because they're not ex-Rentokil what Bromard actually is.
Bromard, right? I'll explain it. The problem was that if most rodenticide baits, even today, are grain based. Well, the grain soaks up a lot of the active ingredient, and it doesn't make it easily available to the animal, where we needed something that was more palatable and faster. Well, my original background is a formulation chemist, so it was my job to come up with recipes and mixtures. And so again, it was one of these situations where we all looked at it. The academics constantly pumped me with information, and we came to the conclusion that rodents might prefer to eat fat. And again, this is based on observation, because the thing that was impressive about all of the people I worked for is that they studied and looked at things and tried to work out why that did that and why that, and it was a constant stream of study. And one of our technicians reported that they were having a big problem in a lard factory because the rodents were eating the lard. So we thought, hang on, this could be interesting. So after a few weeks of experimentation, I came up with a mixture of flour, lard, and at that time, bromidolone. We did field trials with it because the lovely thing about it was we were able to pack it into corking tubes. And so it now became just like mastic. And we did some field trials in Glasgow against mice. And at the time, I don't know if you know about this, but Glasgow was built on ruins. So under all of the streets of Glasgow city centre, it's hollow. There are caves and caverns and all under there you'd never know about. But of course, it's a haven for rodents. They love it. So we went up there doing these field trials, squirting the bromide into bait boxes. And we stayed up there for a week. And we inadvertently left one of these bromide tubes down in one of the cellars. And the next morning we went down and it was empty. The mice had got in there and had eaten all of the tube from the inside out. And there were a couple of days later, there were bodies everywhere. And so that's why that became a very good success, because it disguised the taste of bromidolone. And
was that the first fat-based rodenticide then, really?
Yeah.
Bromide. Yeah. Because at that time, Rentokil had the, not for want of a better word, patent for bromidolone, didn't they?
No, we did patent it. Yeah.
Ah, right.
And after that, I ended up with more than 50. So
that fat-based rodenticide, that went on to different things. Like, did you have anything to do with beta lard?
Yeah.
The Resipin one.
Yeah, all of them. Oh, yeah.
And alpha lard and diphenard, because that was an interesting one.
No,
beta lard, wasn't it?
Yeah, they were all mine. Yeah, and they proved to be very effective. And the nice thing is, you see, for the technicians, it's so easy to go around with a caulking gun. And from the health and safety point of view, you weren't coming into contact with the bait or anything like that at all. I'll tell you an interesting story now, which again, it was one of these funny things that happened. But in I think the 1982, something like that, after we developed Bromard, we had in this country a transport strike, and all of the delivery lorries in the country ground to a halt, and they were on strike for over a month. Now, if you think about this, for the food chain, that's a disaster, because everything's just in time, has to be, everything is delivered and used. There's no provision made for stuff not moving. And so I got a phone call from one of our technicians in Grimsby. He said, would I be able to come up there, because he's got something that he wants to show me, you see. So went up to Grimsby, and he took me to a grass seed merchant's warehouse. And now this grass seed hadn't moved for a month, and it was in great big sacks of Hessian sacks. And I mean, and there were, tons and tons and tons of it. They're all stacked high. And we went into this warehouse, and this guy said to me, now stand still and don't move. So we stopped. And as we stood there, all the sacks started moving, because they were full of mice. There were thousands and thousands of mice in there, because, the seed hadn't been moving. They went in there and gobbled it all up. So again, we fumigated the place there, but it just goes to show one little thing like that, and it's a pest controller's gold mine, isn't it? I mean, it's people are desperate, and if you know what to do, then it's very, very good. The other thing I was going to say, if you want another interesting story, going back to these yachts, we had another call from Monte Carlo, where the biggest luxury yacht in the world was parked, and that was owned by Onassis. And so I went out there to have a look at it. And the captain, very nice blokes, very nice bloke, the captain, he said, oh, well, let me show you the problem. And they had this magnificent oak panelled saloon in the middle of the ship, made by German craftsmen. And so I had a look round there. Couldn't see much, and he said, no, come over and have a look at this wall. Well, there was a oak panelled wall, and on it was riddled with woodworm in the shape of a square. It was like somebody had gone there with a shotgun and shot out a square. And I said, well, what's that? And he said, well, we didn't know until we took the painting down. So I said, well, where's the painting now? And they said, oh, it's in the strong room. He said, because we took all the paintings down because we thought you might be fumigating in the ship. And I said, well, we are. And anyway, he took me to the strong room, and in there were, well, at the time, there must have been about 30-40 million pounds worth of paintings in there. And one of them was an original Warhol. And I don't know if do you remember the Warhol painting, The Lips?
Mm-hmm.
That's one of his most famous ones. Well, that was the original. It was on that ship. And anyway, I looked at the frame, and it was absolutely alive with woodworm. And I said, well, here's the source of the infestation. Anyway, I did a bit more research afterwards, and it turns out that when Andy Warhol, who, as you know, lived in New York, did a painting, he used to frame them as well. But instead of using decent wood, he'd go out and rummage around in skips and get old pallets and things. And he made his frames out of these old pallets. And so you see what happened. This painting was hooked onto the wall, and the woodworm got from the pallet into the wall, and that's why it was in the shape of a square. Amazing. You see these strange things, but there we are.
I've got a question for you. Spoke about the academics and the practical men, getting you to that point where you have that product.
Yeah.
How do you then take that you've mixed up some lard and some thingy into a caulking gun? How do you then, or were you involved in that process from there to getting it to be a mass product that could be shipped to all the technicians? And how did you get involved in that?
Well, you see, I could sort of put my hand up and say I'm guilty, because what I'm not is a team player. Everything I do. And if I'm not in control, then I'm not really interested. And I suppose you could argue that if over the years you've built up a wealth of knowledge, and I have to say, based on making mistakes as well, because that's how you learn, you make mistakes. If I've got all this knowledge, then I'm quite happy to apply it. And also, I'm quite happy to take the rap if it goes wrong as well, so that don't worry me. What I was going to say, in passing, before I answer your question in full, you see, I grew up just after the war. I was born in 1948. And at that time, the country was on its knees and it needed people to rebuild it, like, with my parents. And at the time, it really was the time of the bulldog spirit. It was everybody working together and doing everything properly. And there was none of this limp-wristed, I've hurt my hand, I can't do anything. There's none of that. It was, you get on with it. And it makes you tough because, when I was in my teens, there was no messing about like, I don't feel well, I'm not going to go to school today. Because you get a clip round here from your parents, and because they had standards, they drove it into you that you had to succeed. And on top of that, fortunately, because of my father, I was taught lots of practical skills as well, how to make things. Even in those days, I didn't believe in chucking something away. If it broke, you fixed it. There's no. And if you didn't have one, like a cycle or a go-kart, well, you made it. You didn't wait for somebody to give you one. And so I think that's what makes you tough. It makes you want to succeed. And on top of that, I'm dyslexic. So at school, I was given a hard time because I was the school dunce. And so I had to defend myself to prove to people that I was capable of doing things. So that's what makes me like not a team player. I just learned from the beginning. If you want something done, you do it yourself. It's no good relying on anybody else. And fortunately, again, that goes back to Clive Thompson. I was given carte blanche. If I was the inventor of something, then it was my baby from beginning to end, even when it was in production. And, something went wrong, it was me that had to go and sort it out. Now, I'm not saying I did that in isolation because we had really good people all around us, but they trusted me. Everybody accepted, well, it's your product. What do you think we should do? And even from the marketing point of view, product registration and all of it, although it wasn't, if you like, me being in charge of it, it was my baby. And that's how everybody regarded it. And fortunately, it worked. And the other thing I was going to say, with the flying insect control system that I developed, which at the time was completely revolutionary. Nobody had ever come up with a moving adhesive screen. which incidentally was based on the camera technology, wind-on camera technology. And in all of my inventions, everything, it's never been a question of money. I've never been motivated by money. What it is you have a picture in your head of what the final thing is going to look like, what it's going to do. And you work, and in the case of FICS, it took 3 years. You work to achieve that vision.
Did they come to you and say, look, we're looking at a new fly killer instead of the D4, or did you just think?
Sometimes. We were always looking for new technology in every aspect. But a lot of the time, we didn't come up with anything because the D4 was such an effective flycatcher. It was very, very difficult to do it. But the marketing people said to me, yeah, no, we understand all that, but we just need something new because it's getting old, and we want the sales force to be able to go and talk about something new. So that's where it came from. But it's an interesting thing because, first of all, we had no idea if it was going to work. And at the time, I employed an absolutely brilliant outside design company who I worked with. And again, it was one of these blue sky things, we'd all get together and just kick things around. And out of that came the idea, oh, hang on, wait a minute, what about if we had a film that moved, Anyway, so we made prototypes. And again, remarkable, because now the company's quite big. I mean, we had 32 companies overseas. And Clive Thompson was still the chief executive, but now he was the big man. He still used to come into the lab and play with the prototypes that we were developing for the flycatcher. And he's the guy that came up with the name, the Flying Insect Control System. That's his. He developed that. So anyway, what I was going to say was, so you have this picture in your head. And I mean, I knew exactly what it was going to look like and what it was going to do and all the rest of it in my head. And I can tell you that, the company that made it, of course, was Brandenburg in Birmingham. Yeah. And they teamed with us on many projects to make our equipment for us. And I can tell you the most... emotional. I think that's a fair word. The most emotional experience for me was to walk into the factory, into the production line, and seeing my picture that was in my head now coming off the production line, being put in boxes. Absolutely wonderful.
Do you think, it's going to be a bit controversial now in a way, there was a period in time when Rentokil were at the forefront of pest control. And then once they started getting rid of people like Del Norton and John Charlton and people like that, they seemed to lose their way for quite some time.
They did. No, and I agree. And of course, if you appreciate me still being inside, yes, very well, particularly with Del Boy. I mean, Del, he was the leader of my flying squad. That mold was broken when he went, and unfortunately, he passed away about 10 years ago. He was a fantastic bloke, and he's one of these guys that would go down to Plymouth to do a ship fumigation, and the next day would be up in Glasgow doing something else. Loyal, dedicated, wonderful guy. But you know what happens when companies get big? Sometimes you end up reporting to someone who's a pillock, who doesn't understand the business or what you're doing. And I was devastated when he told me that he'd sacked Del. I couldn't believe it. And you're absolutely right. But I mean, what was far worse, of course, is when Clive Thompson got kicked out when we had the coup. That was an absolute disaster. Do you remember that? That's when they sold Felcool.
Yeah.
And I was still there at the time, only for about another year, because I took early retirement then because I couldn't take it anymore. To watch a company being destroyed in front of your eyes is particularly one that you've helped build up. Very, very soul destroying. And I can tell you now, I mean, I really don't care if anybody knows this or not, but I can tell you now that there was this coup. The bald sacked Thompson. And to be fair, he was becoming a megalomaniac. So he wasn't capable of the brilliant rational thought that he originally had, purely and simply because the company got too big. I mean, we were turning over 3 billion by then. So it was too big for one man. Anyway, they got rid of him. And they brought in the most useless bunch of people you could ever imagine. I mean, one of them was a newspaper proprietor. Another one, I think, ran massage parlours in the Far East. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And then when this lot came in, the first thing was they sold Felcool and they moved to these palatial offices in Victoria. And to give you an idea of how palatial, the floor above us was owned by Google. And that move cost £50 million, straight off the bottom line. And it was absolutely unbelievable what was going on there. And these people seemed to be oblivious of how to run a company at all, knew nothing about pest control. Anyway, some bright spot, well, it was this guy, I can't remember his name now, Doug Flynn. He was the new chief executive. He decided that he was going to get rid of 200 of our top people. These are people who've been with the company for 25 years, people who'd started off as the tea boy and become managing directors of big businesses, and they knew what they were doing. Anyway, he decided he was going to get rid of them. So it was Night of the Long Knives. And so what we had, because nearly all of them were close friends of mine, you see, and you'd get phone call. Did you know that John's just gone? Pete's just had it. And it was like constant drip of, oh, he's gone. And people started to say, hang on, they can't just get rid of people like that. And my mate, who was one of them that got the chop, he said, oh, yes, they can. And he told me exactly what they were doing. You see, as you well know, Hugh, in the golden days of Rentokil, we didn't have an HR department. The branch manager was the personnel manager, and you got on with the people. If you liked them, they were in, and if you didn't, they were out. And it was no argy-bargy. It was a lovely way to run a business. Well, the first thing that this crowd did was to bring in an HR department. And so they had this guy who turns out at the end of the day to be a professional hitman. There are people in the world who are employed just to go around sacking people. And he was an absolute professional at it. And this is how it worked. You'd be invited. It didn't happen to me. I resigned. I'd had enough of it. I knew it was all going on. What would happen is you'd be invited into his office, sit down, and he would pass a sheet of paper across to you. And it would be your resignation letter. So the people who, honest, decent, loyal people, first reaction, I'm not signing that. This guy then smugly would say, oh, I'm afraid, well, you are. No, I'm not signing that. No, oh, hang on. Here's the deal. You sign that now, and we'll give you 300 grand. But you'll also sign a confidentiality agreement. Okay? Now, if you don't sign it, oh, and it's now, today, right? No, there's no tomorrow, today. If you don't sign it, then that's the end of the deal. And if you then decide to sue us, which, let me explain now, of course, you're quite entitled to do, because we are breaking the law. I know that. But if you decide to sue us, we will employ the best lawyers in the country. We will go to the High Court. And if you lose, you'll pay all the costs as well. So everybody signed. That's how you do it.
Yeah. Like you would.
Huh?
Like you would, knowing that there's legal team, the legal team as was.
Yeah. But that's how, at a corporate level, you break the law. And there's nothing anybody could do about it. They were stitched up like kippers. Because, by the by, a lot of these people, including me, through the years, we had good option shares in the company. And 300 grand may sound like a lot of money, but most of us had 300 grand anyway. So, no, the problem is paying the legal fees, as you say. That's how they got you. But if you've got that sort of behaviour going on, that's not a company I want to work for.
That's also quite a massive knowledge drain, isn't it, for a company when you've got the people of that caliber like Dale Norton?
Yeah. Well, where's the logic in that then?
Well, you think it was, the Rentokil library. You think of the Rentokil library, and you think of those characters that wrote those books, and the years of knowledge and experience that suddenly disappears from a company, and it's like, we're not the leading.
No.
Is this the byproduct of having shareholders though? Is this like, I'm thinking laterally? Yeah. Is this not when you put a new guy in charge who knows nothing about pest control, who stands there and goes, listen, we've got all these people on all these wages. If we get rid of them, then the profits go up. And he looks at it solely from a bean counting point of view.
Oh, absolutely.
The shareholders go, brilliant.
You're right. That's exactly what it was. I can tell you now, because it's all under the bridge. I flew to New York to meet our shareholders to tell them what was going on. And shortly after that, the chief executive got the sack because they didn't understand exactly what was going on. And so, no, it was terrible. And one little thing I was going to mention to you, Hugh, you must have gone to Felcourt a few times, didn't you?
Oh, beautiful place.
Yeah, right. Well, downstairs in that corridor downstairs.
Sorry to stop you there. Felcourt's before my time. Tell us about Felcourt, because you've mentioned it a few times, and there'll be loads of listeners who don't know.
Yeah, it was actually built in the 1920s, but it's a mock Tudor mansion. A magnificent building in its own grounds. And if you were running a sort of prestige company, that was exactly the place you wanted to be. That's the building. Because, everybody around the world knew Felcourt. That was like the Buckingham Palace, And
as a technician, sorry, Colin, as a technician, you did your training. Then after 6 months, you would go to Felcourt for your residential. You drive up to Felcourt, and you drive down the drive, and you'd look at this beautiful building that was you were gonna stay there for a week. Residential course, and you just thought to yourself, this is a company to work for. Look at this.
Didn't it make you feel proud to? Yeah. And not only that, at the time, they looked after you. A wonderful, benevolent company, and particularly with Sir Clive. A lot of people, again, don't know this, but the way that he looked after staff, people who were seriously ill in the company, whose medical care had expired because, you know, they were ill for a long time, he would just pay for it himself, extend the care. You know, it was such a wonderful car. Anyway, downstairs in Felcourt, we had this long corridor. On one side of it was a very, very long glass-plated cabinet. And inside it was all of the history of Rentokil, including the Pied Pipers thing from Hamelin. Yeah, all of that. And it was when people came, people were proud to go and take them down the corridor and show them the history of the company in this cabinet, right? Right. Do you know one of the first things that this chief executive Flynn did when he came to the company? He had it all smashed up and put into a skip outside in the car park. So how do you think the people felt there who've been there for years? Huh? Very sad.
It literally was, Sean. It was a great place to stay. You had a little bar area. You had your own little bedrooms. They fed you.
I've spoke to a lot of people who work for Rentokil, who were Rentokil through and through, and after they've left, I've always asked them the same question. I say, "Is it a cult?" And they go, "No," and then they go, "Actually, yeah."
It's more than that. It's a family.
So this was the question I was going to ask, because everybody who's at Rentokil, it would appear when they are there, they have them believing that they are the only people in the world who can do pest control. Like they are it. How do they get everyone to buy into them being, we are the answer, nobody else comes close?
Well, exactly. Well, it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning. It's a perfect storm. I've never worked in a company before where just about everybody all got on with each other. Not only did we get on, we were friends. We used to go on holiday together. And I mean, I'm not talking about one or two people, but I'm talking about a group of friends of more than 50 people. And we all respected each other. Yeah, sure, we had rows and fallouts and all the rest of it, but only in a family sort of way. And not only that, and this is the answer to your question, Sean, that what happens when you have a perfect storm like that and you've got everybody on the same wavelength, working together, respecting each other and all the rest of it, you don't want to let anybody down. And that's what it happens at the end of the day. It didn't matter about the money or the time of the day or whether it was Christmas Day or what. If somebody had a problem, then you went out to help them out. And that I find remarkable. I don't know if it happens anymore in companies, but that's exactly what it was like for us. And I mean, people who, like yourself, Hugh, were with Rentokil for a relatively short time, they're still family. And people who, you know, haven't worked there for 30 years, they're still good mates. You know, they phone you up and how's it going? And incidentally,
I remember being in a car park, and I was about to get in a Rentokil van, and there was and I thought, oh shit, car park warden's coming up, and he came up to me and he said, "All right, son." I'm like, "Yeah." He said, "I'm an ex-Rentokil serviceman. You can park here for nothing, mate." Just one.
Amazing. Yeah. Incidentally, I don't know if you knew him. Do you remember Peter Priestley?
Yes, I remember the name.
Oh, right. Well, he passed away a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, yeah, BPCA. Yes, of course I do. Yeah.
He was president of the BPCA, yeah. Wonderful bloke. An absolute towering comedian. Very, very nice bloke. And incidentally, I'm not plugging it, but that's the reason I wrote my book. It was to record all of these people and stories for posterity, because so many of them are now dying. Well, naturally. I mean, we're all.
Hang on a second, Colin. Hang on a second, because watch this. I don't know if you'll see this or not. I've been sent some. Let's see if I can find it. I've been sent some messages today, Colin. I can't say who it was, For anybody looking, if it
Oh,
shows
there it
you
is. Yeah.
the accidental expert, but you're going to laugh even more at this because when I told them you were coming on, they went and dug out their old Rentokil garage. Right, you found a Rentokil service bag. Hang on a second. And a mouse had chewed its way in.
Oh, yeah.
And it had found a tube of Bromard that was still in his bag that he managed to dig out. So he said to us, you can tell him that Bromard is still killing mice even today.
Well, I'm blown. Amazing, isn't it, eh?
I think the thing, sorry, I was going to say to Sean, the thing is about the cult thing. What you've got to remember, in sort of like in the 80s, Rentokil was the best pest control company. There's no two ways about it, you know. And you got the training, you know, you constant training. You had team meetings, you had the conferences. So when I'll never forget when we went to one conference, it was tacky as shit now, but they had Spandau Ballet on, and it was "You are gold, gold," and it was blaring out, and everybody was there, and they were all like this, and it was, you know, and it was that sort of American-y, culty sort of, but with a British edge to it.
You see, the point is there that you just made me think of this, that what you said is quite true, the training, and for much of my later years in the company, I spent most of my time going around the world training people in fumigation and all sorts of things, and that was good. And as you say, that's what made us what we were, the training. But I also have to say, and I'm very proud of this, it also spawned other people, because many people that we trained left to go and start their own pest control companies. So it wasn't, including you, it wasn't just sort of like, this is ours, it's all in-house, you're not having it. No, it was quite the opposite. And again, I can tell you the brilliant logic of Clive Thompson was, no matter that we've trained these people and they're going off to start their own businesses, good luck to them. Because if they're successful, we'll buy them back. You see, isn't it clever? And of course, as you know, a lot of the very successful pest control companies came back into the Rentokil fold. So, I'm very pleased about that. The training aspect was another bit I enjoyed, because I started off my working life as a school laboratory technician, and after a while I became a locum teacher, and I really enjoyed the teaching. And again, remarkable things happen, and you see these cultural things which are superb, because for me as a lecturer, the most rewarding thing is to get into a room of, say, 20 technicians who are there because they're keen, they want to be there, and they challenge you and they ask you the most difficult questions they can come up with. And of course, if you've been doing the job long enough, you can bat them all off. I mean, and you should be able to answer all the questions. I got a real thrill out of that. I got a buzz out of that. If someone asked me a question and say, now here's the answer to that, and it wasn't to be clever or pompous, it was to pass on the information. And as I went around different countries, I mean, the UK, pretty good. The Holland, Germany, Switzerland, places like that, fantastic, because these are much better educated people. They're much better educated people than we have in this country. So they're already sort of 3 jumps ahead of you, wanting to trip you up with one of their very clever technical questions, you see. And it was good, because, these meetings, they used to buzz. It was tremendous fun. But I have to say, one dreadful downside, which, again, if you're a lecturer, you'll appreciate this. I ran a training course in Ireland, in Dublin, and it was to train people to carry out container fumigation. Now, we had a hotel that we took over in Dublin, and we had, I think, about 30 technicians come along. And so with all of my courses, I'd start off as a sort of preamble to loosen everybody up, just ask them a few questions. And of course, what I realised, and I don't know if you've found the same thing, but in Ireland, they want to be comedians. You know, they want to come out with silly things, and you wonder what on earth you're doing there. So one of my questions was, well, before we start, can anybody tell me how a car works? Can anybody tell me how a car engine works? So one of them at the back puts his hand up and says, oh, well, everybody knows that. You put the key in and you turn it and it starts. And he thought, well, they all laughed. They all thought that was funny. And I suddenly realised these people didn't have a clue what they were, oh, goodness knows what they were doing on a fumigation course, because it's all very well running a fumigation course with methyl bromide and phosphine and things like that. But these are deadly chemicals. You know, you've got a responsibility to make sure that these guys aren't going to go out and kill somebody. Anyway, as the day went on, it got worse and worse and worse. And the next day, they were meant to sit in the morning the BPCA fumigation training course for their certificates. Right, 9 o'clock next morning, I get into the lecture room with my colleague Andrew Leaf. I don't know if Andrew's online at the moment, but anyway, he and I, 9 o'clock next morning, we're in the lecture room. Not a sign of anybody. So eventually, one bloke walks in. I said, well, where are they? And he said, oh, well, they're in their bedrooms. They were all comatose. Every single one of them. Apparently, we couldn't wake them up. So I packed my bags and went home. Oh, no point. So it just goes to show it's not all lovely and rosy when you're training people, you know. But that's the worst I had. I mean, to be fair, most of the training was fantastic, and we all got a tremendous kick out of training people.
Here's a question for you. You obviously keep an eye on what's going on in the pest control world, and for years, your job was to understand the trends that are coming up. If you are a pest control business now, what would you be looking at in terms of moving forward for a profitable revenue stream coming in?
Yeah.
Where do you think the money's going to be?
Well, that is a tricky one. I remember John Bull years and years. I mean, he was such a visionary, John Bull. I remember him standing up in front of a training course. It must be 30 years ago. He said, now listen, boys, these were technicians. Listen, boys, one thing you can be certain of is that technology's never going to do you out of a job. Now, to a certain degree, that's still true today. But, you know, with the brilliance of AI and other things that are going on now, my view is don't see things like AI as a threat. With all of these things, the bottom line is it's a tool. So, for example, and I mean, I do this myself. If I have to write a letter, I mean, I can write it myself. I'm fairly competent at writing. But if you now, as I do a draft and give it to AI and say, smarten that up for me, what comes back is unbelievable. Now, as far as I'm concerned, if I look at that and say, yep, I agree with all of that, and I couldn't have done better myself, then that's I'll use it. On the other hand, I've still got the power to say that's a load of garbage. I'm not letting anybody see that. But so in other words, you have to embrace it. You have to see all of these things as a tool. You can either reject them and say, "No, I don't believe in all of that. It's a load of old rubbish," or you can say, hang on, wait a minute, there are some aspects here that are very, very useful. So in answer to your question, Sean, I would say you need to study, you need to cherry pick, you need to look at everything that's coming up now and seeing if you can't possibly use it. And it might be that it might develop a new line for you. Incidentally, I saw the other day that a Chinese company has developed a fly catcher which stands on the floor or whatever, and it fires low energy laser beams. It uses AI to see the flies flying and sends a laser beam out them and then zaps them. I did get a great deal of pleasure the other day in writing to them and saying, don't think that you're going to be able to patent this, do you? Because it's in my book. I've already got prior art.
Do you know, I can tell you a funny story about that. I had something I thought we could patent it. I went to someone who knew about patents. And he was saying, as you're probably going to confirm, if there is any written reference to it previously, then you can't get your patent. So this guy had designed a dog flap, which at the time would have been revolutionary. It opened on the collar that the dog had on, so it would only let your dog in and nobody else's dog in. They sent it through and they searched. They could find no record of it. And one of the young lads in the shop went, I've seen that in the Beano.
Yes,
he brought a copy of the Beano in and they said,
that is a true story. That is a true story. The one I was going to tell you, because the same applies also to copyright. And this is, again, a true story. Years ago, do you remember there was, I don't know if they still sell it now, but do you remember Bass beer?
Yeah.
Right.
Bass Shandy.
Fun? Yeah.
Bass Shandy when you were a kid is what your dad gave you, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Well, another brewing company came up with a beer. They entered the market and they had a logo very similar to Bass. And so they tried to protect the label with copyright. And so, again, it went to the agents and Bass challenged it. And they said, no, you can't have that. That's our copyright. And so, and the way with copyright is you have to prove that you've been using that symbol for a long time. And what they did, it went to court, actually. It went to court and Bass produced in the courtroom a photo of Toulouse-Lautrec's, one of Toulouse-Lautrec's famous paintings, painted at the Folies Bergère. And on the counter in the bar was a bottle of beer with Bass on it. So they got the copyright. Yeah, interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Go to you about this.
Come on.
No.
Don't freeze, please.
Colin. No.
Oh, come
because
on,
of all
please,
the people
please.
we've trained and they spawned and gone off their own business. But at the time, we were number one. But again, it wasn't entirely due to the wonderfulness of the organisation. We were pushed into it by people like Marks and Spencer's, who, to give them credit, they raised the standard of food hygiene in this country to an unbelievable level. I remember in my first days of joining Rentokil, I went out with technicians for my training to, being introduced into the various aspects of pest control and visited many clients. And we went to a number of Tesco stores. And of course, in our job, as always, we go behind the scenes. So go into the Tesco warehouses, and they were absolute tips. You couldn't believe the filth and rubbish. No sense of any cleaning or anything like that. and they didn't even do stock rotation. So if you went to the back of one of their stores, they had old rotten tin cans that had been there like 20 years, and they were only selling the stuff that had just come in. And on the other hand, Marks and Spencers were very, very aware of this, and they used to humiliate Tesco, because Marks and Spencers had their own team of food hygienists, and they were very, very competent scientists, and we used to have regular meetings with them. And again, that was great fun, because these were people on the same wavelength, and we used to have well, not exactly battles, but friendly technical battles with them. And they're the ones who pushed us. They were the ones who confronted us and said, what you're doing isn't good enough. It doesn't meet our standards. And they were right. And that's where they got us by the shoestrings and said, now look, if you don't improve your performance, we're gonna go with other pest control companies. And so they were the drivers. And again, well, credit to Rentokil, we did it. We did as we were told, but we were certainly on their coattails. They were the masters.
It makes you wonder how it went from special reporting service with a little red folder that made it special, and you just had a written report and a checklist, and how it's gone from that to the extent that it's gone now with spreadsheets and it's just a world apart.
That was Marks and Spencers. They were the ones who started all of that. Yes, you're right. If a technician went into a Marks and Spencer store, they had to sign the checklist.
Yeah,
and
I remember.
Yeah, I know.
And it's gone from that to, counting flies on a pest trending. It's just gone.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder how we managed with cardboard boxes. Now we've got to stick a label on a box.
I know. But you see, the point is, though, how wonderful it was, if you think about it. It was Marks and Spencers who raised the standard of all the supermarkets in this country. Tesco had to follow suit because people weren't going there anymore. And I think it's these are all part of the mixture, aren't they? This is how things all sort of come together, because it's the influence of other people as well. Very interesting.
I think we've got to talk about the radar system.
Yeah,
if you can.
Yes,
Did somebody come to you with that, or was that a light bulb moment?
No. To be fair, I was only partially involved in that. The R&D under, again, Adrian Meehan, they started playing around with detecting mice by using electronic devices, and that goes back to what I was saying just now. It also applies to my AI comments. It came about because people were playing around with Doppler radar, proximity detectors, electromagnetic waveforms, and they were all. See, they could have said, "Oh, yeah, don't be daft. We're not doing that. We're a pest control company. We're caps and braces. We're not going to piss around with all of that." No, they didn't, because they were visionaries, and they said, "Well, let's see if we can get this to work." So, Adrian's department did all of the work in trying to detect mice by all sorts of electronic devices, but the bit that constantly failed all of the time is, how do you know a mouse has gone into a bait box? You can have infrared beams and all sorts of things, but going back, this is a long time ago. Battery life was very short. You couldn't have anything that was battery run, because you'd keep on going around changing the batteries. And so that's when Adrian came to me and he said, can you help us? Because by then I had my own department, you see. And can you help us? Because we need a very good method of detecting mice. And I then teamed up with the people at Brandenburg, because they had some very, very clever electronics people there at the time. And between me and their people, we developed the pressure pad. And it was that pressure pad that was the key to the whole thing. We designed 2 matrices that fitted on top of each other that were separated by a fraction of a millimeter. And it was only when a mouse put its foot on one of these pads that the 2 wires would touch, and that would send out the signal. So all the time the wires weren't touching, there was no power consumption. And it only used power when the mouse touched the pad. And it could detect one mouse foot pad. And that was the breakthrough. That's once we had that, then that's when radar was able to be manufactured.
So here's a question for you then, Colin. We've heard of all the successes you've had. There must have been some absolute howlers and some screamers you've had over the years. What's your worst? What's the one that sends shivers down your spine even today?
Yeah, well, there are quite a few. I don't know if you know this, but one of my largest inventions, well, you know, the bubble is one of them, but following on from the bubble was controlled atmosphere technology. Oh, incidentally, before I get onto that, let me just briefly sideline for a second. One of my biggest problems in all of the work that I did was working with the EU registration people, because most of them at the time I was there had no idea, had no scientific knowledge at all, but they had the power to block things. And I dread to think of the number of wonderful products that we could have had which got banned by people who had no idea what they were doing. And the bottom line on this, can you believe it? It took 30 years, and it was only last year that the EU agreed that nitrogen is not a pesticide. All right? So we had to register nitrogen to use it in my controlled atmosphere technology system. So we had the crazy situation where we had cylinders of nitrogen. Don't forget, 78% of the world's atmosphere is nitrogen. We had to label cylinders of nitrogen as a pesticide. So we had to do all of this, set back the work for years. My only interest in developing that technology was that it was for conservation. It was for works of art, where I wanted to use an inert gas so that we didn't damage anything. And it started off with these small aluminium bags that we could inflate with nitrogen, purely and simply to drive out the oxygen. And we would be aiming for an oxygen content of about 0.2% oxygen. If we reached that, and whatever was in there for a month, all pests, including woodworm, were controlled, which was a wonderful thing when you've got absolutely priceless works of art, because you could put it in there and there was no risk in the future of it changing colour or going so, because a pesticide was used. It was completely inert. Right. The other thing I was going to mention was, as an inventor, I can tell you what doesn't happen if you invent something is for people to tell you, oh, that's a brilliant idea. That's wonderful. No, human nature is they'll give you all the reasons why it won't work. So it's a battle. Now, the other thing is, most of the inventors I know are not, well, I was going to say confident. They're confident. They're not courageous. They don't fight. So if someone says, "No, that's not going to work," a lot of them say, "Okay, fine, I'll give up then." So you have to fight. And so in Rentokil, where I have to admit, by the time I was doing things, my track record, fortunately, was good, that people did actually say, actually, that's a good idea. But you still have to sell it. And this goes back to what I was saying to you earlier on. It's my baby. I run the whole show. So I develop it. Now, the next stage now is to get everybody using it. And it's a battle because people, I don't know if we want to do that or not. It wasn't like greeted with open arms, oh, let's have it. It was, yeah, you had to sell it, okay? Anyway, to give them credit, our Rentokil France company call me up and say, we love your controlled atmosphere technology and we've just got a contract. So, oh, yeah, right, oh, that's good, well done. Yeah, can you come over and train us how to do it? I mean, that was part of the deal, yeah. Where is it? Oh, it's in Marseille. Yeah, okay, fine. What's the contract? And they said, well, we've persuaded the head of French culture to go round to all of the churches in the Nice area, in fact, the whole of the Côte d'Azur, to take in all of their oil paintings and put them in a warehouse so that we can kill the woodworm in the frames. I said, well, how many are there? Well, they said there's 200. This is our first job. There's me thinking we're going to put it in a 1 meter cubic bag, and they pull off a contract of 200 paintings, priceless oil paintings. So, okay, fair enough. I went out, ordered all the equipment, got it all out there. And this was in its infancy. And I hadn't completely cracked how you get very large volumes of bags down to 0.2 oxygen. I mean, that was tricky stuff. So anyway, we started doing the work. And as it happened, the lady in charge of the French cultural thing was a pretty keen scientist, good scientist. A lot of the conservation people are good scientists. And she had her own monitoring equipment. So we'd spend all day in this warehouse, filling up with nitrogen and all the rest of it. And we struggled to get down to 0.2. Now, today, I know the reason. And it's because wood in particular can soak up more oxygen than in the actual chamber itself. So you can comfortably get down to 0.2 oxygen, but then after a couple of hours, more oxygen comes out of the wood and the reading goes up again. And we couldn't explain that at the time, but I didn't know why. So I was, right, we got down to 0.2. Well, thank God for that. She'd come along and say, no, it's 0.5. Really? Well, our instrument says it's 0.2. Well, she said, let's have a look. And of course, we'd pump it up and it was 0.5. And she'd say, oh, no, this is not acceptable. We can't accept this. So I went back to Marseille, must have been about 12 times, going backwards and forwards, because what I'd do, I'd go out there, I'd stay at the hotel, get everything down to what I thought was okay, go back home, and I'd get a phone call to say, no, it's gone up to 0.5 again. I had to go back. That was a nightmare. But we learned.
Did you get that job done then?
We did. Yeah, she was quite happy at the end. Sorry,
how was that? Was that just pure persistence? Just kept dropping it until the oxygen was out?
No, exactly, by luck. Because what happens is that it's true the oxygen does keep coming out of the wood, but then there comes a point when there's no more oxygen to come out. And but I didn't know that. But it's a long curve. it doesn't sort of like happen like a flash. It takes a long time. And we did eventually get there, but it was a nightmare. Yeah. I mean, I really wish they hadn't got out and sold that one.
On that's the thing, isn't it? Sell it and then work out how you're going to do it.
Oh yeah, well, I'm up for all of that. I don't mind that. If it's within the realms of normal pest control. But I can tell you the worst one ever. In a mid-1980s, we had an outbreak of foul pest in this country. Massive outbreak. And again, I used my flying squad they had to be brought in because this was highly, highly specialised work. And, this is in poultry houses, where some of these poultry houses held at the time, more than that today, but at the time they held 250,000 chickens in cages. And they all had to be put down humanely. Now, how the hell do you do that? Well, fortunately, at the time, we still had hydrogen cyanide. And with Del Boy, he formed a team, I formed a team, and we went around the country carrying out the controlled slaughter of chickens. A very, very harrowing experience, I can tell you, because the hydrogen cyanide comes in 1.5 kilo tin. They look like giant baked bean tins, and you had a special tool that went on the top that you opened it and the lid came off in one piece, and inside there were a thing called diskettes. They just looked like beer mats soaked in hydrogen cyanide. So what you would do with self-contained breathing apparatus on, you'd go to the far end of this poultry house and walk backwards, scattering these diskettes onto the floor. And as you went backwards, the chickens literally bounced. They were dead in 2 seconds. Now, when you see that, you really appreciate what a really toxic gas looks like. And anyway, we got it to a fine art. We knew what we were doing. And I have to say that the people I had were highly, highly professional people, and they did a fantastic job. But on one occasion, I went to do one somewhere in the north. It was a very, very big building, and they had a system called the California system, where instead of having just cages down each side of the building, they somehow managed to stack them so they could get more birds in there. So this had double the number of normal birds. And so, again, I mean, we didn't know what a California system was, but as far as we were concerned, it was a fairly sealed building, and there was no reason why we couldn't use the same technique. So we went in there, we scattered the diskettes on the floor, because, these poultry houses are about 100 metres long. So we'd be walking backwards to the door, as usual. The chickens were dying. As we got to the door, there was this almighty crash. It's like an earthquake. And what had happened was that in their death throes, the chickens kicked out in unison, and they caused the cages to crash onto the floor. So when we opened the door and looked in, it was carnage. It was a mixture of completely smashed to pieces cages and chickens, and there was nothing we could do. And so it took 6 weeks for labourers to have to go in there and hack this lot out.
Wow.
And the final thing I was going to say, word of warning to all of you pest controllers out there, I poisoned myself with hydrogen cyanide. And I'm one of the few people in the world who survived. And it was a stupid mistake, but then, we make stupid mistakes. What you do after a fumigation like that is you have a plastic bin liner, you go back into the building with contained breathing apparatus on, and you pick up all the diskettes and you put them into the bin liner. And again, you go outside, you've now got a bin liner with hydrogen cyanide diskettes in it. I took my mask off, had the bin liner, of course it was, had air in it, and of course I gave it a squeeze. And the hydrogen cyanide came up into my face, and it was like someone smacking you in the face. Unbelievable experience. And of course I just crashed to the floor. And fortunately recovered, because, they say with hydrogen cyanide, if you inhale it, you either die or you survive. And it's just a question of how much oxygen you can get back into the body. And I think me falling over, pumped some more in like that. But I could have been killed. And it was a stupid mistake, but it's a reflex.
To accident.
Yeah.
That's what an accident is, though, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'll never forget that, because, again, these things are good for you to have. That's why people don't get electrocuted. You only have to electrocute yourself once. You don't do it again. And excuse me, my dog's talking to me. Come up and talk to them. Here, up.
On that one, we're going to ask the last 3 questions, if you don't mind.
Because questions has been great. The problem is, Colin, we would have sat here for 3 hours talking to you. But I have a brilliant idea which I'm going to discuss with you.
It's time for my gin and tonic, anyway. Right.
I know.
What's that, Sean?
Up.
How cool would it be to have Farah and Colin on together, just the pair of them talking?
Yeah, that's the young chap and the old chap.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, I'm not that old.
Well, no, but older.
I am a little bit older than Farah.
I appreciate that. Yeah. No,
I think that would be phenomenal.
Here she is.
Before we go into 3 questions, I want to ask you one question quickly, because it's going to come up in the near future. There's the old pointer. There's been a lot of talk recently in the pest control sector about pricing up a wasp nest, and there's a massive variation from 50 quid up to 150 quid, 300 quid, whatever it is. Yeah. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a funny thought. Since I've left Rentokil, I've sort of had a what's that word when people find religion?
Epiphany.
I don't like killing anything at all. I go out of my way not to kill things. So in my house, we've got lots of wasp nests all around. Don't forget, they're pollinators. We need them. They're incredible insects. I did an enormous amount of research into wasp control. And the more research you do, the more you appreciate how clever they are. The other thing, the reason for my epiphany is these insects, like all of the things that we kill, they've been on this planet millions of years before we have. And we come along and fuck it all up. And so I don't like killing things. But having said that, of course, the bottom premise in pest control is if it becomes a problem, then that's a different matter altogether. So if, as a last resort, you have to kill things, well, in most places, if you've got access to the wasp nest, then, the elongated powder puff tube, which I should think people are still using, aren't they?
Oh, there's plenty of different stuff now.
Yeah. Well,
Except
the
for
point
FICS.
is, if you know what you're doing, it's not difficult to take out a wasp nest. I mean, all right, I do accept there are times when you have to get up into a loft and all the rest of it. And if you have to get up into a loft and you have to dress up and everything, and that's probably worth 300 quid. But it's not worth 300 quid if you've done the job in 10 minutes. And what catches up with you in all of this, and it goes back to my luxury yacht work. Yeah, these people are multi-millionaires. You can charge what you like. But if you do, they talk to each other and you won't get any more work. So for me, the bottom line is charge a reasonable price. And you know what a reasonable price is. You know what the hourly rate is. You know how much the prep costs. So there is no excuse for somebody to add another naught on. And if you do, then I think they should be ostracised by the BPCA.
And on that subject,
Yeah.
guess what we're talking about next week?
Oh, yeah, we're talking price and wasp nests.
That's what we're
next
talking
week.
about next week.
Is it?
Wasp nest pricing. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, that's my 2 acres worth of what it's worth. Been very
So,
nice talking to you. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Good stuff.
These are
And
the
good
3
luck.
questions we're going to ask Colin.
Yeah.
Have you enjoyed your time on the podcast?
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. It's brought back some very happy memories.
Brilliant. Give us a shameless plug, Colin.
A what plug? A
Shameless plug. Give us a shameless plug. You say it, Hugh.
Give us a shameless plug. Plug something.
Shameless
book.
plug.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, well, all right. So, yes, if you do, I was going to mention this. I'm not plugging it. In fact, if anybody
Go
wants
on.
it, they can have a free copy. I don't need the money. But what I was going to say was that if you do read it, there's 2 things there. One is for prosperity, for all of the wonderful people that I've worked with who I've put in the book. And also, if you read between the lines, there are some examples of pest control there that have never been published before, particularly the termites of Paris, which I would hope that people would find very interesting.
I'll tap you up for a signed copy.
I will definitely have a copy.
Well, with pleasure. Yeah.
That's what we'll swap. Hey, guess what? Guess what I've got now that I can hand out? I got T-shirts.
Oh, yeah, he's got T-shirts. Yeah, he's got T-shirts. Yeah.
We've got the T-shirts. And they
Yeah.
arrived.
Yeah.
And the last one is, who would you like to see on the podcast?
Oh,
Can you think of
that's a
anybody?
I don't really know anybody these days. Unfortunately, all the ones that I would have had are all dead. It's sad to say. I mean, I was just thinking of the great Graham Crowe.
Oh yeah,
He
yeah.
passed away a couple of years ago. John Charlton.
Yeah.
But then again, go back to what we were saying earlier on. With the wonders of AI now, maybe we can reconstruct them.
Right. On that note, thanks ever so much, Colin. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
If you hang on a minute afterwards, we'll just have a quick natter afterwards, and I'll run the credits and we'll take it from there. So thanks for listening, everybody.
All right.
Take care.
Ta-ta.
Thank you for listening to the Beauties and Beasties podcast.